Welcome to Betrayal Recovery Radio, the official podcast of APSATS, the Association of Partners of Sex Addict Trauma Specialists, hosted by Dr. Jake Porter. APSATS is a nonprofit organization providing professional training and compassionate support to partners affected by problematic sexual behavior and betrayal trauma. In each episode, Dr. Jake guides a conversation of enlightening insights and practical tools to empower those affected by sex addiction and betrayal trauma to use their voices and live their values. The mission of Betrayal Recovery Radio is to offer hope to those in need of healing and growth to those moving through grief. And now, here's your host, Dr. Jake Porter.
Welcome back to Betrayal Recovery Radio. I'm Dr. Jake Porter, and today we're continuing our deep dive into the painful reality of when a betraying partner won't or can't do the work of healing. If you haven't listened to part one yet, I encourage you to go back and do that. In this episode, we're going even deeper, exploring what true change looks like, why progress can feel frustratingly slow, and what both partners can do to move forward. My guests, Pam Blizzard and Steph Farnsworth, are back to bring their insights, and I think today's conversation will challenge you, encourage you, and maybe even give you some clarity about what's next for your healing journey. So we'll dive in here in just a moment. I do want to remind you of a few things coming up from APSATS, the Association of Partners of Sex Addict Trauma Specialists. In April 17th through May 1st, every Thursday within that date range, Jessica Edens, a board member of APSATS, will be offering her workshop, Betrayed Families, Support for Children and Families. You can learn more at apsats.org. And then also in June, the 17th through the 20th, the foundational training, the multidimensional partner trauma model training, will be offered live via Zoom. If you work with the population dealing with betrayal trauma, or you desire to do so and you have not ever taken the multidimensional partner trauma model training, I want to strongly encourage you to do that. It will be really impactful for you and help you to be more effective with them. Lastly, a few free things that we want to give you if you've not yet claimed these gifts for listening to Betrayal Recovery Radio. You can go to apsats.com/podcast to get a free gift from the APSATS board. You can claim my book, Breaking Barriers, Building Bridges, for free at drjakeporter.com/breaking barriers. And also my YouTube channel has tons and tons and tons of free resources. You can find me on YouTube at Dr. Jake Porter. All right. With that all said, I don't want to hold back any longer. Let's continue listening to this conversation on when he's just not doing the work. So I'm going to try to describe this in case anyone's just listening and not viewing. So I'm putting up a slide right now, and at the top it says, "What is underneath sexual acting out?" And so I've got like a pyramid here, and at the very top of the pyramid is acting out. Those are the actual behaviors of a sexual addiction or chronic betrayal. The actual behaviors, meaning you could catch it on a video camera, right? You could see it happen. Acting out there. Underneath that, what is driving that? What precedes that is preoccupation. And so if you're familiar with Patrick Carnes' conceptualization of the acting out cycle, this is a slight variation of that I have here. So preoccupation is this mental space that I'm in prior to the behavior happening. Preoccupation can be this sort of, titillating, attraction, or a titillating kind of draw that's got sexual arousal, but it doesn't have to be. It could be, resistance. Could be a form of preoccupation. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Which actually ends up having the inverse effect of doing it, which is why I tell people, go focus on a positive. Don't try to resist the negative. But it's a mental space that is actually priming us physically to act out. So the question is, then has to be like, okay, but why? Why do we go to that mental space of preoccupation? Well, it serves a purpose. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. And what's underneath that, I believe, is affect dysregulation. So affect dysregulation is where think of it sort of like emotions. It's my felt sense in the body. It's the gnawing sensation of guilt, or the butterflies of anxiety, or the elephant sitting on my chest of fear. It's that felt sense in the body. And preoccupation, even if it's an uncomfortable preoccupation, it takes me out of my body so that I don't feel the scary, out of control emotional sensations in my body. Okay. Now, what we know happens is, if I've got this affect dysregulation, whether it's anxiety, which could be about something at work or something with my kids or something completely unrelated to sexuality, right? But it's there. My brain knows it can go to this space of preoccupation. It takes me, it's an escape from the felt sense in my body. Eventually I act out. Well, what does the acting out do? It ends up feeding the affect dysregulation, because afterwards I feel fear or shame or despair that ends up, while I get this momentary relief, it ends up feeding the affect dysregulation. But then, why is the affect dysregulation there? And this goes to those developmental deficits, which is early traumas, early childhood experiences, not being nurtured, not being mirrored, unresolved, relational traumas from childhood. So, okay, that's often what happens in the addiction. In recovery, the first thing we try to do is stop acting out. And I'm not saying that this is true 100% of the time, because everyone's different. But the vast majority of the time, you don't go start with deep childhood trauma work. You don't go start with working on your rage. No, you start by stopping the acting out behavior. So early on, betrayed partners, the reason I'm going here is I want you to have an understanding of generally speaking, what the work might look like. Early on, there's probably not going to be a lot of talk about early childhood trauma, or about these other, or about, I do think it's good to do some immediate work around empathy, because that will be stabilizing for both of you. But the deep emotional skill building, like that Steph was talking about, of flexing that emotional intelligence muscle and building that, it's going to be a minute before that happens. Because once I stop acting out, it quits reinforcing the affect dysregulation. And so there's some space for a little bit of healing of the nervous system, and some onboarding of some skill around tolerating emotions as they come up. Then I focus on the preoccupation. And hear me clearly, this doesn't mean you never have a thought pop in your head around acting out. It doesn't mean you never have a temptation pop up, but I don't dwell on it. I don't hold on to it. I don't feed it, whether that's by giving into it and turning it into a fantasy, or feeding it through resistance, feeding it through trying to strong arm it into death. No, I learned to just move on. I learned to just keep moving toward a positive. Then as that happens, and this is what Pam was referring to earlier, now my affect dysregulation is actually going to go up. I'm going to be more moody. Now my anger is going to surface more. Now my sadness and my depression is going to come. I've seen guys who have been known to be happy-go-lucky, fun, stable, and then they get 10 months into recovery and they hit this spot, and all of a sudden they're depressed. They're grieving. They're feeling these huge emotions. Why? Well, because the mechanisms that help them not feel them aren't in place anymore. And so this is where, like Pam was saying, it's a good thing that those emotions start showing up. Okay. It might be the best thing. All of a sudden he's expressing anger. All of a sudden grief is there. All of a sudden, it seems like he's coming undone. That can be really scary. I want to validate that. But it might be a good thing. And this is where distress tolerance and emotional regulation skills really come into play. And then as I'm working on, or as I'm learning those skills, now I can actually work on those developmental deficits, the early traumas, the early gaps in my own development. And here it might be through family of origin work, but it might be through real time, actual, just learning to step into maturity, learning to show up as a functional adult in real time with you, the betrayed partner, even. And it's probably going to be a combination of both, going back, looking at the childhood stuff, but also learning to embody this as an adult. To me, that's sort of the general sort of way it often goes. Pam or Steph, y'all want to speak to any of that? Anything on this slide?
Oh, yeah. I maybe a question too, or relating experience from my own experience and what I've heard is, sometimes in the Anon rooms, 12-step rooms for the family members, where there's alcoholism, a lot of times the spouse will say, "Oh my gosh, I wish he'd start drinking again."
Yeah,
Right?
I've heard that.
Because they don't have the healthy coping skills. So some of those uh, defense mechanisms, or those, my husband, I would say, oh, the best defense is an offense, right? He'd become offensive because he still didn't know how to protect those feelings. That was just another way of trying to push those feelings away by means of external control rather than controlling internally, that internal locus of control,
Right.
trying to push me away or push other things away. So I would say, again, speaking to my former self, boundaries.
Yes.
And your voice, right?
Yeah.
Doing whatever
Yeah.
you need to ask for what you need, to ask for the behavior you would prefer instead. And if you can't get that, then take your space if you need to.
Right. Right. Totally. Thank you. So I think, this can help provide sort of a general picture of, like I was saying, different seasons, different foci we're going to come up, different emphases are going to come up.
I
But
wish I had this. I wish I had this as sort of like, here's the bigger perspective
yeah,
of what you can expect with your partner, so that,
yeah.
I had appropriate expectations.
Now, and you said this, Pam, and I want to underline it. This doesn't mean you put up with raging.
Right.
This doesn't mean you put up with someone who becomes overly avoidant and isolative and isn't sharing with you at an appropriate and healthy level about their own process, right? This doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean cutting someone out because, oh, I'm having a hard time right now. And this is where I do think that, like, a couple-centered approach, whether it's my couple-centered recovery model or like Carol the Coach's Urkel model, or one of those models where we introduce some empathy work early on, it's going to benefit both people, because I think that betrayed partners deserve to know, okay, maybe if I'm the acting out partner, okay, maybe I'm going through this big wave of grief and I have no idea how to handle it because I've numbed it for my whole life and I'm really, really struggling. But my partner deserves to know that that's what's happening. Right. And I can still show empathy for how hard it is for my partner to see me in this place while I'm in this place. And so that's the both and of this. I want to be clear that Steph and Pam and I are not saying, well, he's got his own work over there, so you just have to, twiddle your thumbs and hope that it's happening. No, you have the right to hear, what is happening. I'm not, I don't advise, expecting a transcript of every therapy session. But you should get to know basically what is the work that's happening right now.
And it's encouraging that I used to think empathy was something that was part of your character. You're either an empathetic person or you're not. And I was wrong. And I tell people very often, I thought I know empathy. I'm a woman. I'm a mom. I show up in my meetings. And then I got into training and I was horrified to learn I was wrong. But in fact, I might have been doing more damage. But the good news is that it is a skill that can be learned and deepened over time. And this is where I'm going to give you a kudos, Jake. You excel at breaking down the different kinds of empathy, the different parts, it's kind of like climbing a ladder, that you can actually break it down into pieces of foundation and steps and learn empathy. And I want to encourage everyone on both sides of this journey that this is something that can be taught. It can be learned.
Totally. Yeah. So, so let's say, because we're trying to, shine a lot of light here is to break down any sort of all or nothing thinking that he's doing the work or he's not doing the work, or she, if she's the betraying partner, is doing the work or not doing the work, right? And we're saying it's going to look different. It's going to feel uncomfortable. There are going to be obstacles or things that feel like obstacles, but that is the way, that is the work in the moment. And yet, sometimes someone isn't going to be doing the work. And so like in our, in the program that we work in together, the Choose Connection Academy, there's videos, there's exercises for couples to do, there's live coaching calls and all this. And sometimes we hear from betrayed partners, he won't watch the videos. He won't do the exercises with me. He won't, watch the call, the coaching calls with me or whatever. Or he'll only do this piece and not that piece. So let's talk about that situation. What
do we have to?
Well, I'll go first. I'll go first on that. So, and I know we're going to focus on, because it's a practical, tangible example. I'm going to be talking about our Choose Connection Academy program here, but this could be, there are other couples programs out there, or there are other, or it may just be, he was doing 12-step and he was doing 7 pillars and he was seeing a CSAT and he was seeing an empathy coach. And now he's only doing, 2 of those 4 things. What about the other 2? So it doesn't have to be specific to the program that the 3 of us work in together. But one thing I want to say is, like with the Choose Connection Academy, we give people a year to go through what is essentially, 17 modules. Conceivably, it could be done in 5 to 6 months, but we give people a year. And one of the reasons we do that is because there's going to be an ebb and a flow to pace, and there's a saturation point, right, where that sponge can be so full, if I just keep pouring the water, it's going to fall on the ground. And so recognizing the need to take a week or 2 to slow down and maybe recover from a difficult 2 or 3 weeks of work. And I'm not saying you don't do anything. I'm not saying you leave recovery behind entirely, but maybe you don't hold the same pace, right? That could be a piece of this, but yet we know that there are going to be other times where that's not the situation, where someone's just a betraying partner or an addicted partner is just not engaging in a program that they said they would, or holding to commitments that they said they would. Then what, Steph and Pam?
Then you turn the focus on you. If my partner's not behaving in a safe way, then I turn the focus on me. And that doesn't even have to mean he's acting out. That it means he's emotionally unavailable, avoiding talking about anything hard because I just don't want to, or avoiding doing the work like CCA, like watching a video, like or listening to a podcast together, or reading a book together, right? Like outside of the CCA program, there's lots of things you can do.
Yeah.
Together. Or oftentimes I suggest like maybe listening and taking notes separately and then talking about it together, what you got out of it. But if there's just there's like none of that, then that's when I know it's time for me to take a step back and put up some boundaries that are hard for me too. It's not what I want. I don't want to feel disconnected from you. But even in my attempts of connection, they're not being met in healthy ways. And we're still in the patterns and the cycles that we were in before I even knew what was going on. So yeah, taking care of me and taking the space that I need. And that can look different for any woman. It can be an in-house separation. It can be a full-on separation. It can be gray rocking and still sleeping in the same bed, but trying to like not engage to the point where there are blow-ups or difficult conversations that turn into like an extreme yelling match, right? Like, and I'm not speaking from experience. No, I'm just kidding. I am. I understand this all too well because has been times when my husband's like, I am not doing the work. And he's even admitted to it sometimes. So, it can be painful and frustrating. And I actually, for a year, taught women, what does it mean to focus on myself? Mm. And we had a 4-week course on how to focus on yourself, and me supporting you in understanding your values, writing out what you have rights for. You have rights in a relationship. And just getting curious about me and my needs and my feelings. And when I'm so other focused and so frustrated with what he's not doing, it can be really challenging to show up the way I want to in my values.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important. I think it's important too that we lose so much of our voice in this journey, and that it's only fair to say, hey, partner, when I observe that you're not doing the work, I feel sad. Whatever you feel, I feel sad. I feel hopeless. I feel a little angry. I feel heartbroken. Feel a little disgusted. And to use your voice and say that, that's fair. That's not being mean. That's not being hurtful. That is you sharing connection, sharing who you are, sharing your truth. And it's okay to say, I really do hope you get back on the coaster, so to speak, to refer back to your coaster video, that, he's not on the coaster. He's not in the framework of doing the work. And I know all betrayers at some point, because as the betrayed, we all say, what, did you intend to leave me? Are you done with this relationship? Is that why this is happening? And I know that the betrayers go, no, I want this relationship. And they do say, I'm going to change. But then if the behavior doesn't line up with the words, it's okay to say, I see again, here's another instance where you said you were going to do this work and your actions aren't lining up with your words. And that I feel sad about that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to take some space, since you're not looking out for our best interest or my best interests. Then I'm going to have to look out for my best interests. I'm going to take some space to focus on me, just me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm listening to both of you right now. I'm just hearing how important it is to sort of be clear up front with your expectations, your request, what you need. And especially if you're doing any sort of program together, or I would even say if it is more individual and you're looking to see, is my betraying partner doing that individual recovery work? So even if it doesn't have the couples component, you're watching to see, is that happening over there? The importance of having clarity up front that there is a commitment to do that. And here's how I often recommend that betrayed partners go about that. You don't want to have to, and there's a lot of phrases that come out here, manage his recovery or be the recovery police, or, you don't want to, it's not something you should have to do. Some partners find, it's a safety seeking thing, and they momentarily feel like there's some security in that. I think long-term, it doesn't really help them. So here's what I recommend is that you find a professional. And again, this could apply to couples work. This could apply to individual work that the betraying partner is doing. You find a professional that you're both comfortable with. I do think a betrayed partner should feel comfortable with the betraying partner's support.
And that,
okay,
I'm just going to say that doesn't happen as often as it needs to. There's still some providers out there that are very resistant to even talking to the betrayed spouse.
Yeah.
So.
And that is sad. I think that, like our team here at Daring Ventures, we have a policy. It's a principle here at Daring Ventures. We will support every reasonable request of betrayed partner. We welcome betrayed partners to give, additional information and to speak into the individual work of a recovering addict or recovering chronic betrayer. We welcome that because we recognize the limitations of what we can know without that. So, you as a betrayed partner have the right to feel comfortable. Does that mean you'll feel 100% safe? Well, maybe not, but safety's not an all or nothing, right? So there's some give and take, and you might want to seek your own counsel. And does this feel safe or not? Him or her seeing this personal. But then once you agree upon who that person is, rather than you saying, I want you to go to X number of meetings, and I want you to do this workbook, and I want you to do family of origin, and I want you to do this is your request is, I want you to follow the treatment recommendations of our chosen professional, right? But then you get to know what those are, right? So the the CSAT over there, or the whoever it is, they get to they're the ones that are going to determine the course of treatment, and you get to know what that is, and you get to watch, does my partner then follow through? Not perfectly, because no one will. Life happens. People get sick. People get, have an off week and all that. But more or less, are they following the plan of treatment or not? And that's data for you. And if I could wave, if this were a magic pen and I could just wave this pen over the heads of every betrayed partner out there and make one change internally for them, it would be that they recognize the power they hold in their relationships. That it is largely a myth if you feel powerless in your relationship. You have far more power than any therapist or coach out there. What you participate in, how you show up, how you respond to requests, whether they are kept or not kept, honored or not honored, is so powerful. And so if he is not doing the work, and you, like Steph said, turn inward and you go, okay, this doesn't feel safe. This doesn't feel like it's wise for me to keep putting myself out there and pouring into this in the way I was, given what I see over there. Therefore, I'm going to step back, see what happens. And that might mean the end of the relationship. But that might be because you're getting to see where the other person's heart really is. Yeah, that's some strong medicine, but I think it's true.
It's true.
It is. And I think that's where the power lies in, like, you're talking about how much power the betrayed partner has. Like, for a long time, I was giving my power to the relationship, not even necessarily my partner, but like, this relationship is the most important thing to me. And I, like, giving that power to that created this dynamic where I couldn't say, I'll be okay no matter what happens, no matter what he chooses, whether our relationship survives or not. And that's that inner focus work that you have to do, whether or not your partner is going to recover and heal.
Mm-hmm.
You really do. I mean, in my own situation, there's so much of my childhood stuff, religious stuff, community stuff, women stuff, right? That I need to unlearn, relearn, learn how to not be an enmeshed partner, learn how to not enmesh with my children, right? There are things that need to be done whether or not the relationship survives. And those things that you do, the values work, the rights work, the needs, the understanding my feelings, the emotional intelligence, all that stuff, that can benefit the relationship. And it can also give me that power of, I'll be okay no matter what happens. So it's kind of like, don't skip that.
Yeah.
It's a big part of it.
I love Stan Tatkin, who said, and I quote him all the time, the betrayed sets the conditions for re-entry into a relationship with them.
That's right.
That I get to decide. The old relationship is gone now because of the betrayal. The relationship we thought we had, the agreements, the covenant, whatever you want to call it, doesn't exist anymore. But I get to decide as the betrayed, do I invite that person back into a new relationship with me?
That's right.
I get to decide. And I know a lot of women, their biggest fear is losing I know a lot of women's biggest fear is losing the relationship, but I'm here to tell you that's not the worst thing that can happen. Mm-hmm. The worst thing that can happen is you lose your sanity and your peace to this situation, to the relationship, to this other person that has these dysfunctions that cause your lack of safety or cause disruption or crisis in your life. And you can choose peace and you can choose sanity. And when you do that anyway, when you put your own needs for mental health above the needs of the relationship, then you bring more to the relationship.
Right.
When you're able to put yourself first in your own recovery and health, and we all have to learn new things in this, and learning what these things are that Steph so beautifully spoke about, that emotional intelligence, it's so powerful. And realizing that you have that power to say yes or no to this relationship, you stepping into that power can really motivate you to enforce really good, healthy boundaries that are good for your partner, good for you. And it's just really empowering. I wish I could find all the magic words to convey that. If somebody could live in my body for a few hours and feel what that feels like, they'd be motivated to do it.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. Well, ladies, any last minute, any sort of final practical suggestions or tips or takeaways or reminders that you would offer listeners who maybe they've been nodding along? How would you kind of bottom line this thing for them?
I would say, I know your relationship is important to you. It should be, right? It should have been important to both of us. We were all in, and it's okay to not be all in all the time. And that you can become the best recovery person. And try to stay away from black and white thinking about knowing whether somebody is in recovery or not. That's kind of mind reading. We can't truly tell whether somebody's in recovery or doing the work or not. And focusing on yourself just helps everybody in your life. It helps you, it helps your partner, it helps your children, everybody who comes into contact with you.
Steph?
Absolutely. This just came to my mind. Like, often when I'm coaching women, I say it's never just one thing. It's never just the betrayal. And I think I can easily get to this space of like, there's this bubble of betrayal and here's how you fix it, or here's how you feel better, or here's how you take care of yourself. But it's really not ever just working on the betrayal. And there are other lives that are impacted by this. And like Pam was saying, to be the best mom, to be the best version of me that I want to be, and the best partner, if my partner chooses to come along on this recovery journey, learning these things that we've talked about in the podcast, learning emotional intelligence and boundaries and what are cognitive distortions and how do I question my own thinking. These things spill over into every part of your life. So it's not work that's going to be all for nothing if your relationship doesn't survive.
Amen.
And if your relationship does survive, it's work that I think will just expound the value of it will make your relationship incredibly valuable and beautiful. So,
yeah.
Amen.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate you being here so much. Thank you for this conversation. I know it's going to be a gift to so many. Thank you for the work that you both do.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes. All right. See you next time.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Betrayal Recovery Radio, hosted by Dr. Jake Porter. If you value the content we've shared today, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. For more resources, visit APSATS.org. That's APSATS.org.